Salve Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. While still more people gathered in the crowd, Jesus said to them, "This generation is an evil generation. It seeks a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah. Just as Jonah became a sign to the Ninevites, so will the Son of Man be to this generation. At the judgment, the Queen of the South will rise with the men of this generation, and she will condemn them, because she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And there is something greater than Solomon here. At the judgment, the men of Nineveh will arise with this generation and condemn it, because at the preaching of Jonah they repented, and there is something greater than Jonah here." The Gospel of the Lord.
If we read through Jesus' words in the Gospel too quickly, we could really misunderstand this passage, especially this verse. This generation is an evil generation. He says this about this generation, but yet this is not a condemnation. It is a cry of great hope. A loving Father who recognizes that his dear children need help, and he makes it apparent to them how desperate their need is. And I say that he makes it apparent because when you look at the characters that are involved here, you see an underlying message if you're observant. What does Jonah and the Ninevites share in common? And even more, in today's feast, St. Teresa of Avila, what do they share in common with her? They are all three unlikely choices. Unlikely choices to be about God's bidding. The last people you would think of. I couldn't help but be caught by the psalm for today, Psalm 113. He raises up the lowly from the dust, and from the dunghill he lifts the poor. Do a little research and find out what dunghill is, and you'll know how profound that is. And so these unlikely candidates are all involved here. St. Teresa, the last person anyone would have thought of to be an agent of a reform that would literally change religious life, especially for the Carmelites. Now, Jesus points out the Ninevites. The Ninevites are a part of the Assyrian Empire, the cruelest empire known to the people of Israel. They would completely destroy and burn and kill everything in their path. There was no mercy. And yet these people are sent a messenger from God and invited to receive his mercy. That's amazing. Jesus points to them as a Jew himself, who I'm sure knew very well of the history between their two countries and the feelings that his countrymen had about this country. And yet, historically, in their own Old Testament, they have notes about a prophet sent by God to bring them conversion. So profound was the conversion of the Ninevites that we're told, if you read the book of Jonah, that even the animals, their pets, repented. That's amazing. Jonah, for his part, also the most unlikely person you would think God would send. Rebellious, a rogue, hated the Ninevites, was angry at God because God told him he had to go there and prophesy, and he knew they were probably going to be converted because he knows how loving and merciful God is, and he's really upset about this. Why do they deserve that? And yet God works through him. Here is a good message for those who were confirmed yesterday with chrisms still wet on your forehead. I can even smell it here in the church. Some of you were confirmed yesterday. Who was confirmed yesterday? Praise you, Jesus. Good. God is not without the creativity and the resources to take any one of us, as unlikely as we might think we are, and use us for his greater glory. And also, none of us are beyond the reach of his hand of mercy. The only thing that separates us from his mercy is a choice on our part not to accept his extended hand, which continues to be held out to us even through the moment of death. No, God knows no boundaries to the extension of his mercy, and he knows no boundaries to the grace that he will invest to use the most unlikely for his greater glory. And as it says in other places in the scripture, that becomes shame to those who are thought to be wise and learned. But it becomes glory for God and his great mercy.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare